Well, welcome back to my channel. You join me on a brisk day here in Lakefield, Ontario, hence why I'm down in the basement, in the workshop, with my new backdrop. That's a pretty nice looking flag. Today, you join me after a bit of prompting. My good friend Richie Eldridge is to thank for this video, because he helped me come to the conclusion that I needed to make this. I posted up a picture on my social media the other day of some well-tied chod rigs, and I say well-tied because they're well-tied for me. I'm getting really good at those, by the way. But I've made a set of chod rigs, and the reception was very interesting. I was actually kind of taken aback by the fact that a lot of my algorithm must be finding North American anglers, and they didn't see a need for the chod, and that was surprising. So after a little bit of discourse with some of the people that were commenting on the post, Richie Eldridge said, "Hey Will, Carpy Commons, I believe, or Carp Commons is his YouTube handle. Definitely give him a check out. He's a heck of a guy, Richie." He said, "Hey Will, you should make a video talking a little bit about why the chod rig is so effective when and where you're using it." And I thought, man, why didn't I think of that? Probably because it's Richie, and he's a couple of steps ahead of me some days. So let me show you a little bit about why the chod rig is so effective. And to do that, we're going to start off by showcasing a traditional rig that most North Americans will recognize. The standard inline system, the semi-fixed bolt rig. So I have here one of my mortar inlines, and you can see that I've got a standard hair rig here. And this is par for the course what most North American carp anglers are going to use. They're going to wrap a method around that, right? They may or may not tuck their rig back in, really effective in certain circumstances. Other times it's better to let it hang. And they'll cast that out, and generally will search out those clearer areas, right? Areas where they can present with confidence a nice bottom bait, set of corns, maybe some tiger nuts, so on and so forth, or a big snowman rig. But there is a limitation with this rig. And that limitation is that when you go to cast this rig out and that weight leads the charge, it's dragging the hook bait straight down with it. So if you were to cast this and, maybe you found some clear areas, but you make the cast and there's a little bit of weed at the precipice and you cast that out and it falls and it goes right into those weeds, it will drag that rig through the weeds as well, where there's a chance that it could get hung up. There's a chance that, you could catch a few pieces of debris on your way down and compromise your hook point. But regardless, this rig is not super effective in weedier conditions, right? This is best suited for those clear areas. And you and I both know that it's not always the clear areas where carp are going to feel the most comfortable. Now, for those of you who are predator fishermen and have ever fished with the drop shot, you'll understand immediately why the chod rig just makes sense. So this is a traditional chod rig setup. So you see I've got my teardrop style weight here. Okay, I've got a little buffer bead here. I've got my material about give or take 6 feet of it here. I use this a lot with my 12-foot setups. And in the middle of that, you can see the chod rig, which is a stiff fluorocarbon hook link material. There's a little tungsten bead right at the top of the swivel. I've got my hook bait, I've got a bait screw, and I've got the hook stop on a nice chod hook, sorry. And you can see here that I've got these 2 artificial corns. Now, you can use specific beads. However, I've found that if you want to have something that's going to work every single time, little trade secret, a couple of artificial corns, not the floating ones. Make sure they're not ones that float, but those are absolutely deadly. Now, you can see that this rig just simply won't tangle. There's no way this rig tangles on a cast, and it's why it's one of the most effective rigs for just, shooting and praying kind of thing. So why is it that the chod is my absolute favorite when fishing in the weeds? Well, it's because of the mechanics. Once again, drop shot boys will understand why. This weight leads the charge on the cast, and then it will hit the bottom, and that rig will slowly settle. Everything will slowly settle. And because this is going to be a pop-up, it's going to obviously sit on the top side, and this will sit over top of just about anything. It will rest over top of, weird little clumps in the weeds. It will also set on top of, some leafy weed debris, and it can present perfectly just about anywhere. I also use this rig not just exclusively in weeds, but when I'm just casting and trying to catch a showing fish. Or maybe if I've seen some activity and I don't want to put out too much bait, I'll put out a rig that's, a little bit closer to their face, because they're not going to always be directly on the bottom. We know that. And the hope is that they might just reach down and pick this up. And this rig is incredible for its hooking mechanics. As you can see, the minute that rig gets picked up, it's going to flip in the mouth and find a bottom lip every single time. That's the beauty of having a stiff hook link material like fluorocarbon. I've been using the Chod rig now for about 5 or 6 years, and I basically never leave the house without it now. And the reason for it is because I have swims like my neighbors swim. This spot where it's just choked out with weeds, and it never seems to go down, right? Like, you swear the first cast in April and May, you're bringing back weeds and it's already green. So knowing that, that's a spot where a Chod absolutely comes into its own. I'll still pepper some bait out there, I'll put a few spawns out and whatnot and try to create some clear spots, but it's just so dense that the amount of food necessary to kind of create these pockets, it's not going to happen overnight, that's for sure. But using a Chod, I've been able to snipe fish off of their patrol routes. And this has been proving itself to be incredibly effective, where I would put down a standard inline system on a clear spot that I'd found, and it wasn't even getting a sniff, but I would get 8 runs on a Chod in 3 hours, right? And I think a lot of that is because of the fact that it's sitting over top of the weeds. You have natural food that's going to be coming up and using those weeds, as a means of climbing up to the surface. A lot of nymphs, a lot of hatchings. And if something is visually attractive, it'll at least get them inquisitive, and they'll go and they'll check it out. And if you have a rig that's got the right mechanics, it doesn't take much for them to hook themselves on it. So I really recommend that you give the Chod rig a try. It's not a difficult thing to tie up, and you can buy some pre-tied materials as well. But stick around, and I'll show you how I tie my Chod rig.
To start out, I grab about 6 to 8 inches of 30-pound fluorocarbon here, and then I grab my Chod hook. Now, in this case, I'm going to be tying with a size 4 today. I have a bait screw, a hook stop, a flexi swivel, as well as a tungsten bead. Now, this may or may not be necessary, and I'm going to include it in this video so that you have the versatility of being able to run more buoyant pop-ups. Sometimes you can get away with just the weight of the other hardware that's present, but it's always good to have the versatility. So let's get started. So grab your fluorocarbon material and ensure that your hook point is pointing down towards your pinky finger as you pass the line up through the back of the hook towards the shank. Then you will turn a 7-turn knot here, just like a knotless knot, as if you were tying a hair rig, and then pass that back through the hook eye so that you have something that looks a little something like this. It's good throughout this whole process to make sure that everything's really nice and snug and to give everything a good pull to make sure that that fluorocarbon loses its memory from being on the spool. Next, grab your bait screw, followed by your hook stop. And now I like to make sure that this hook stop is perpendicular to the hook point so that when I go to cast this out, I know that this rig is not going to be compromised. If you have the bait screw too far back or too far forward, you can have some issues. So making sure that it's perpendicular to the hook point will ensure the best mechanics. You can then slip on your tungsten bead should you determine that it's necessary to critically balance your rig. And finally, we will tie on our flexi ring swivel here. I like to use a 3-turn knot and simply pull that down, making sure that you wet it really, really good. Pull everything super, super tight. Make sure that that ring is you're not tying onto the ring, and rather you're tying onto the swivel. This is important because this ring is to go on the leader. Once everything's nice and tight and secure, you're going to want to work this fluorocarbon between your fingers. And the friction of the rubbing, as you can see, I put a little bit of pressure on this. That's going to help to take out any of the memory. It's just enough heat that it won't damage the material, but it will help to sort of realign things to be a little bit more preferable. What's super cool here is that I tie up a lot of these, and sometimes they end up becoming chods, and sometimes they're hinged stiff rigs. With just the attachment of a boom section, I can very easily turn this into a rig that I can use on a semi-fixed inline or even helicopter, so on and so forth system. So there you have it, a well-tied chod / hinge stiff rig. It's versatile, it's effective, and it's super easy to tie. But regardless of what you choose to do with this rig, I hope that this video has found you well, and until next time, tight lines.